What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJH287. Also on LinkedIn, where I post more content. The website, dsmsports.net. We can find every episode and more content. And, of course, follow along with the podcast on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. We got a best of episode for you guys today. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and people tell me that they do like it because it's a chance to catch up on the catalog that they haven't listened to. We've been doing this podcast for over 10 years and just continues to astound me the level of guests we have on and the amount of conversation, insightful conversation, just such great stuff. And we have an awesome show for you guys today. You're going to hear parts of conversations with 5 tremendous guests, about 15 to 20 minutes, give or take, of each conversation. You can always listen to the full episode, of course, throughout the archive. So a little preview of what's to come on this best of. First up is going to be Olivia Witherite. When we spoke, she was with The Athletic. She's recently just started a new gig with the Webby Awards. She is really, really awesome. You're going to like that. After her, you're going to hear from Matt Gardner, Vice President of Innovation and Digital Strategy at the St. Louis Blues NHL team. One of my favorite people in the business and one of the coolest titles, and seriously someone that's really pushing this industry forward. After that, you'll hear from Burton Lee. He was with the Peterborough Petes, the OHL team, who made junior hockey. He is now with the PWHL. Burton just does great stuff and really gets it in so many ways, and one of my favorite people that I've met throughout my career, honestly. After Burton, you'll hear from Jeremy McPeak. Jeremy is a legend in this space. He was doing stuff before we knew what stuff to do, and he continues to push this industry forward, and one of the best people as well in the industry, and has really built a nice family tree as well, just touching everyone that he meets in a great way. After that, the last one will be Joe Pinchin. He is with the Chicago Bulls. He was when we spoke as well. He is part of the Bulls' great team there. They have really assembled an all-star team with their content, so he's going to be a great one to finish us off. So, first up, you're going to hear part of my conversation with Olivia Witherite. As I mentioned, she was with The Athletic at the time we spoke. She's now with the Webby Awards. She just does so much good stuff for this industry. She has a great sports jobs newsletter that you should subscribe to, especially if you're in the industry looking for a job. And Olivia is just full of good insight and knowledge. In this part of my discussion with her, you're going to hear about how at the time The Athletic, and just in general some good insights about thinking about platforms and how to balance, especially with a subscription platform like The Athletic, where you want to give away and engage a lot on those social media platforms, but obviously you want to also drive people to the owned platforms where subscribers can get the value. We also talk about building community, understanding your audience, and what looks like the package content. So listen up. Here's my part of my conversation with Olivia Witherite.
For me, and I think this goes for anything, not specifically my job or my past job, is that when people are creating a social strategy or trying to figure out what works, it's really important that you set these goals and objectives up front. So this is what I want to be to our audience. This is what I want to sound like. This is what we need to accomplish. And then once you have that, you'll have different tools as far as, like you said, Twitter Spaces might fulfill some of those, or Instagram, or even Facebook, or whatever it might be. But I think it's really important to have these set goals in place and then view the platforms as how you're going to get there. So I say that one goal was, say if you worked at a place and a goal was to hit a certain amount of clicks, right? So then if that was the case, then you might not focus on something as new and flashy as a Twitter Spaces. You might rely more on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it may be. So I think it's really important that people set goals up front of who they are and what they want to be on social. And then from there, things kind of fall into place a little more easily than trying to fit everything into a specific platform, even if it doesn't make sense. And there are so many now, and there have always been a lot, but there are so many distractions too that I think might not necessarily help people in the long run. They just happen to be flashy in the moment. And some of those things you do want to jump on because they're going to be around for a while, like TikTok. But it definitely, I think it serves people well to set goals as a digital or social team ahead of time, and then use the platforms as tools for them.
Totally. Yeah. It all makes more sense when you're not just looking at how do we use this platform, but how do we use this platform in a way that's relevant to what we're trying to accomplish ultimately. And you're not just playing around with toys. They're creating thoughtful strategy, and the answers kind of reveal themselves through the platform's capabilities as well. And I feel like too, looking at The Athletic, your audience, and maybe I could be wrong too, but I look at like a Bleacher Report or ESPN, or they're trying to reach the broadest potential fan ever, even someone that has maybe not watch a single NBA game until LeBron hit the shot over Steph Curry in the playing game or something like that. Whereas the Athletic started off with, we are for the avid sports fan. We're someone who is not getting malnourished in their general sports diet, and we can go a little bit deeper. I am that sports fan, but at the same time, the Athletic also has these great off-the-cuff stories that just reveal things that have nothing to do with sports sometimes, but are off the field, with how these athletes have great stories to tell and fun quirks in history. And a lot of that even came out during the pandemic when there were no live sports to cover. So, like, who ultimately is your audience, or is it anyone that could potentially be interested in great storytelling, whether they are a diehard sports fan or not?
Yeah, I think storytelling is a big part of it. The Athletic does a really good job at it, and we try to replicate some of that on social. And then I think like the Athletic knows that people are willing to invest into their sports fandom. So I don't think that, like you said, I think that a lot of the people who subscribe and follow have a little bit more knowledge because they're already invested, right? So in the same way that someone invests by buying tickets to a game to show their fandom or by doing something else, we know that people are invested in their sports fandom because they're subscribing or following. So we want to make sure that we're speaking to the right people in that way.
Totally makes sense. I mean, and heck, I remember when I did my first trial with the Athletic, I was like, all right, I got however long it was, I'm gonna read the heck out of this thing. And then the more I read, the more I just became addicted to it, and now I'm a paying customer years later. So the system works.
It's really good. I mean, I was a fan of the Athletic before I joined as an employee, and I think that it's just been really fun to see like some behind the scenes of some of this writing, because it truly is incredible. I mean, it's incredible journalism, period, and then it's framed around sports, right? So just the amount of amazing writers that we have, and the storytelling and the features, and now even more so like analysis on breaking news and podcasts and things like that. It's just a really incredible offering.
Yeah. And something that I feel like is maybe underappreciated with the Athletic is there really is a lot of community that takes place on the platform and on the Athletic, whether it's great conversations that happen in the comments section, and there's a lot of back and forth even with the writers in the comment section. Now you guys are doing a little bit of in-game engagement as well, and whether it's on Spaces or in the app. So, like, how do you look at the opportunity to foster community among subscribers on these owned platforms, on these owned real estate, versus having those conversations on social? I mean, okay, let's bring this out to Twitter, let's bring this to Reddit, or let's bring this into the Athletic. Hey, did you know the writers will respond to you in the comments? It's like, how do you balance those two opportunities to really build community?
Yeah, so I can probably speak better to more off-platform or off-app, because that's what I do. I think with anything, no matter what it is, whether it's, like you said, social, traditional social, or Reddit, or YouTube, or whatever it is, it has to be a valuable experience for someone. So are we creating a good user experience for this person where we're meeting them right here, where we've chosen to be, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or YouTube? Are we creating a good experience for the person who's already there and who is our target, a sports fan or whatever it is? So I think if we're doing that, then we can view it as successful, even if it's not necessarily coming from our app or something like that.
How much can you learn a little bit, or learn from what's happening on the app in the comments, or other places where fans are engaging, and vice versa as well? How can that community team learn from the conversations happening on social, and how do you convey those conversations and what's happening on social?
Yeah, a lot. So I know when a story is getting a lot of traction with comments, and so that probably means that it is interesting to the community at large. So a lot of times I definitely notice comments and see them, and they're surfaced to me. So that's the one side of it. And then I think, the other side too is that with audience engagement on social, we can kind of see what people would be interested in too. So it's definitely, we notice the community, and I think we notice the good comments, things like that too, why people are into the story. So a lot of times people will say like, oh, it really hooked me here, or things like that. And a lot of times that can make its way into social copy too. So community is a big part of the reason why I love social and digital. So it's been fun to kind of, like you said, peruse the comments and see what people are saying.
Yeah. And then vice versa on the other side of the coin, how do you guys go about trying to convey the learnings that you have from the viewing everything happening on social, whether it's how fans are responding to content and stories that are being promoted on from the athletics accounts, or just, here's what is really resonating in the social media space right now. Let's do something around it. I mean, granted, your writers and your staff are all paying attention as well, but no one's closer to it than you guys are day to day, seeing how fans are engaging, especially with the athletics content.
Yeah, so I think if we know something is resonating, it gives us the chance to say, like, okay, how can we tell this again in a slightly different way? Or how can we use this to hit an audience here? So we're definitely following along with a lot of the learnings. And sometimes we've even used like user comments or things as a tease for an article. So it's fun to see when, someone can offer insight to a story or talk about a comment, and that can kind of definitely encourage some creativity from our team too.
I love that. Yeah. And I think you hit on something too that's really, that I think the Athletic does a good job of, that I think about myself even with this podcast, and that is, how do we take something that is a great whole and get more out of it, or present it in different ways, whether it's on different platforms or different ways to digest it. There might be an amazing quote from Olivia Witherite on this that I can turn to a quote graphic and promote it that way, or have a snippet from this podcast, or if it's a video, you have a little video snippet to share on social. So do you guys look, especially the stories that are really resonating and are really taking off, is it almost like, okay, we have this great buffet here, we have this great meal here, what's the best way for us to sort of slice and dice it and make sure that we are highlighting some of the top things and also presenting in different ways for fans to engage with different media types and different platforms?
Yeah, so it's definitely a combination. And I think something that you said makes a lot of sense too. There might be different parts of the article or whatever piece of content that resonates with different types of people. So if we're doing a profile on someone, I don't know, who grew up in Michigan, like we can call that out, and maybe tell our writers to hit it from that angle, versus if they play in LA now, there's a different angle there that'll hit a different community. And it's fun to see like different backgrounds and things come together, and how people can have a conversation about something, even though they're really interested in two different parts of it. And I think that that's one thing that we try to do, is like pull out the most relevant information from these, or again, something that'll resonate with a certain group of people, and then take it from there.
Gotcha. Yeah. Like I said, there really is so many different angles to approach a lot of these stories from, and they will hit different audiences differently, different communities differently, because they have different passion points that are the entry point to the Athletic ultimately as well. And it's interesting to see how stories do start to then spread across the sports ecosystem, and something like, Boardman Gets Paid all of a sudden is on every sports media outlet out there. And ultimately, I think that is a good thing for the Athletic, as long as, they're getting attribution and all that. Like, yeah, I originally read this in the Athletic story, and hopefully it gets there. So what's it like when you see sort of a story from the Athletic sort of snowball across media outlets? And did you find that does ultimately ladder back to the Athletic and increases the credibility of the writers, increases traffic, not necessarily traffic to the website, but just knowledge and mentions saying, hey, I read this in the Athletic, or this is from the Athletics article? Or does it oftentimes there's a lot of stuff that kind of get lost in the ether if there's a big news drop from Shams or Boardman Gets Paid?
Yeah. So I think one thing that we try to do as a social team is make sure that we can drive the narrative when we can. So if we know that a Boardman Gets Paid type of thing is coming, we can be the first person to put it out with some context, right? So it's not just this, it's like, here's why he said this, or here's what it means, or whatever it is. I think a perfect example, and this is actually right when I started at the Athletic, was the sign stealing scandal happens right after I joined. And that was quite the introduction. And I think with that, like, obviously you go down the road and people aren't crediting the Athletic anymore, or doing follow-up stories on it, or that aren't referencing the original or things like that. But at the end of the day, I think that's an article and a story, the story of a lifetime, that is ultimately attributed back to the Athletics. So I don't like the phrase like all publicity is good publicity. I don't really believe in that, but I do think that within the context of something like that, when it's something that everybody is talking about and that you started it, it'll kind of make its way back to you. And I think then on our social channels and things like that, it's adding context and things like that. So when people do find where the story is coming from, they have more context and more knowledge than they might from reading something that's aggregated or something.
Totally. Yeah, especially if it's like whatever, one line on a Bleacher Report graphic or whatnot, and it's like, okay, I want the full story here. And you go about going down that rabbit hole, or you see that it's from The Athletic, and you ultimately make your way back there, and or have an appreciation of the brand because they're telling these greater stories. And it can certainly compile over time as well. Just a few minutes left here with Olivia Witherite, manager of social engagement for The Athletic, for each episode's shareable stat. Really enjoying just bouncing around all this great discussion about fan engagement and sports fan passion and storytelling, and just a lot of fun. So take me through a little bit. I would be remiss if I didn't pick your brain a little bit about what it's like when all the sports stopped in 2020 with the pandemic. As I alluded to a little bit earlier, I think a lot of us were blown away with the great content The Athletic did come out with during that time. Just completely cool stories, whether it was history based or crazy quirks of culture, and the stories that maybe writers haven't had time to go down and tell before. So what were some of your key learnings from the time when sports did stop, and then what it's been like picking it back up and making sure that you guys are properly ready to go?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, just the fact when there were absolutely no sports going on was just wild. And like you said, it did make everybody creative and scrappy, and finding things to talk about was a challenge, but I definitely learned a lot from it, to kind of know what people were talking about and what they wanted to hear during a time where sports weren't really going on. And I think for me, it made me realize, like, especially around the time The Last Dance came out, because there weren't really any sports then, but it was like a sort of sports moment, of how important sports are for like a sense of community and a sense of belonging on social media or in a specific fan base or whatever it may be. I hope we don't go through a time where we don't have sports again. It was really sad and really, really boring. But I think, again, like you said, it did make me and then all of our team really creative. And I think that I definitely learned a lot from it, as far as like listening to the pulse of what people are talking about and relying, like you said, on history and things like that. And then I think for me too is I really realized, I think on social, everyone feels like they always have to say something. And I think for me, it kind of taught me that sometimes, if you don't really have anything to say, you don't really have to say anything. There were a lot of things obviously going on during the summer that were much more important than anything that we could have talked about. So making sure that when it's necessary, we're giving other people the literal space and bandwidth on their social media to talk about what's important. So that was really, really, really vital for me to learn during this time too, is, okay, when are we going to not say anything? When are we going to say something that's meaningful? And then when are we going to say something that's meaningful, but in the context of sports, right? So it was definitely a learning experience.
Fabulous chat with Olivia. Really, it was a privilege to be able to speak with her and continue to follow along with everything she's doing in the industry, and excited to see what she does now with the Webby Awards. Listen to that full conversation because it's a good one. Next up on the Best of Digital and Social Media Sports podcast, you're going to hear part of my chat with Matt Gardner. As I mentioned earlier, he is VP of Innovation and Digital Strategy at the St. Louis Blues. Matt and his colleagues have just done so much good stuff to truly innovate. He puts the innovation in that title, taking chances with new and upcoming companies and technologies. The Blues fans get to benefit from all that great stuff. And in this part of my chat with Matt, you're going to hear what it's like to sit in his role and what it means to really connect the dots across the organization. We also talk about what it's like to evaluate a new and emerging technology, such an important thing, no matter what part of the organization you're in, but specifically, of course, in the digital and innovation space, when you're trying to keep up with what's latest and greatest and what's worth taking a chance on and what's not. We also talk about the importance of data capture, which is, of course, more important than ever with first-party data collection. So listen up. Here's part of my chat with Matt Gardner of the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah, I think two of the key important things there is that the direction you go as a digital department has to be embraced by the entire organization. Mm-hmm. And if you decide to go down one path and your colleagues and your representatives of other departments don't understand where you're going, you're not going to get to the place that you really want to go. So it's really about moving at the right speed for your company. And everyone works a little bit differently. everyone has different skill sets. You gotta use the skill sets, the resources you have in place, and fundamentally figure out what is the path that you're going to take to have the most success at the right time. And it's very easy in this industry to get wide-eyed and want to do everything. To me, I would love to do fewer things and do those things well versus getting way over your head because the newest, coolest thing has come to light.
Mm-hmm.
And also understanding your market too. Like our audience in St. Louis, I could definitely tell when I got here was different than Orlando. And it was different in other markets that I had been in. So you gotta embrace your fans, understand your fans, and move at a path that they're going to be comfortable with. And the organization is going to really be able to brace and have much success based on committing to things at the right time and doing things the right way.
Yeah, I think your point's well taken there. Just alignment across the board, and the more everyone else understands what everyone else is doing and why they're doing it and how they can work together and have that synergy, it certainly goes a long way across the sports organization when you have so many touch points with fans on a daily basis. So how do you look at those? I think, there's an art and a science to it for sure. Like there's a way you make fans feel, and then there's the metrics that come back from how those feelings may or may not be activated, whether that's through purchases or likes or comments or shares or opens or attendance or whatever it might be. So are you balancing those, the art side and the science? Like what's that pathway for a fan to ultimately win over whatever it is you're looking to win over at the time, whether it's their hearts, their minds, their wallet, their family tradition, or all of the above in some way? So like, is there sort of a path, not necessarily a linear pathway, but a pathway for fans to follow that you're ultimately looking at, or do you just look at it as almost like a scatter plot of different touch points to be leveraged?
Yeah, I think over time your strategies have to evolve, and the way that you position yourselves across your website, your mobile app, your social networks, the way you integrate your partners, the way you position ticket messaging, those are all things that you've got to be prepared to pivot from time to time. And of course, with us, we went from being a team who is regularly in the playoffs, but never to the finish line, to finally completing the journey and winning a cup. And so, our fan base today in 2021 is much different than it was in 2018. And so as we're thinking about how we're going to, focus our attention, where that attention is going to go, you have to really navigate the waters that you're in. And a lot of those decisions happen on a year-by-year basis. And we're doing a little bit of that now, trying to post-mortem on what just occurred in the season. Obviously, COVID times, it was a very strange, unusual year. And now we're okay, we're going to start getting back to normal. We're going to prepare for 18,000 fans in the building. We're going to get people really hyped up and happy to have hockey back at its highest level again in St. Louis and across the NHL. And so our strategies going into this season, actually, if you look at things year over year, heading into the 18-19 season, we had missed the playoffs by 1 point. After the next season, we had won the Stanley Cup. After the next season, we had lost in the bubble in the season that was disrupted. And after the next season, we played a 56-game season and got swept in the playoffs. And so the last 4 seasons, our approach and our results have been very different. And I think that's how we have to think about things, where we put our focus from a content standpoint. How are we best engaging our fans? What are our fans reacting to? What are the things that are working for them? And then just being able to apply changes on the side. The great thing about our team is we've developed a very flexible approach. And we've tried to do that across the board with everything that we're doing, from the content that we're creating to the partnership deals that we're trying to focus on with our corporate partners, and just making sure we're getting ourselves in a place that we can adjust on the fly as needed to make sure that we're putting the best product out there in front of our fan base.
Yeah, and to your point, it definitely has been, I'm sure, quite a whirlwind of being that playoff contender to being the one that's lifting the cup and having that magic moment in the lives of many of your fans that hopefully some new fans that became fans for life after that season, including we don't need to go into to the Twitter fan that became a fan for life, Tony Tony X.
Tony X, yeah.
But I kind of wanted to look at too, like when you have a cup season or you have just a track record of success, how much is it looking at growing the collective fan base, wherever that might mean at any level of fandom? They are addressable to us. They are addressable to our partners. They are on one or more of our platforms or touch points, versus also like how much can you pay attention to the maybe individual cohorts? Like, hey, now we have, after our cup season, we have more season ticket holders, or we have more diehards, which is more the emotional aspect of it versus the actual monetary investment side of it. And because I mean, across platforms, you're going to have different fans interacting. The way a season ticket holder interacts on the Blues app might be different from a fan who just got on the Blues app for the first time because they want to play a game or enter a prediction contest. So how much of it is looking at the fan base as a whole and trying to accomplish the goal you have set out for them as a collective, versus this is what we want this fan and this group to experience, how they should experience the Blues on this platform, and what looks like success for them. So no, it's definitely a loaded question, but I'm good at asking those. But I love to hear how you think about those different potentially cohorts of fans, both from a development, relationship, and activation perspective.
Yeah, I will say, prior to winning the cup, although the franchise had 50 plus seasons and a lot of winning hockey with regularly being in the playoffs, our fan base was very local. In fact, I think looking at some NHL stats and stuff, like our fan base was probably more local than just about any team in the league. The national stage that we went on with winning the cup broadened our fan base. Seeing more attention on a global level. Great story, obviously, that we had from being in last place on January 3rd to making an unbelievable run and then winning the cup. A lot of those storylines really captivated a much wider audience for us, and so we definitely wanted to take advantage of that post cup. And we also knew going into the 1920 season that we were going to have a ticket problem. We have capped season tickets for the very first time. We've implemented a wait list for the first time. So we knew filling up Enterprise Center was not going to be a problem. What we needed to do is we needed to expand our fan base beyond the confines of our property here. Mm-hmm. Of course, going through that run, we had social media growth and, had solid growth across, our social channels. Two things that we did: one, to make sure that we're finding an audience outside of those people that, are not able to attend a game at Enterprise Center because there are not tickets available. Is we expanded our bar program called This Bar Bleeds Blue to try to get Blues on TVs and mini TVs in bars as we possibly could, so that again we're finding opportunity to connect with those fans outside of venue. The other piece that we did was we launched a custom built fan engagement platform called Lunatics. Mm-hmm. And the idea with Lunatics is, you see teams all the time that are running contests and enter to wins and polls and trivias and surveys and stuff. And every time that we do that, we ask the same questions over and over. Give me your name, give me your email, give me your phone number. Well, we decided that we wanted to create a single sign-on solution and start driving all of those activities into the same place. So Lunatics was launched in November of 2019. We had a couple of months there before the pandemic to get it off the ground. And then we reopened it up at the start of this season. So, to date, the platform has been active roughly 9 months or so. We have onboarded almost 65,000 fans in that time. And we have, those fans, we've validated phone numbers, we've validated email address as part of the onboarding process. So we have legitimate leads for all these people and potential, prospective ticket buyers down the road. But we're also picking up information of, where are these fans and what is their birth date, so we can reach out for, happy birthday communications. Who's their favorite player? What's their favorite jersey that we're wearing this year, so that, when they opt in to receive communications from us, we're targeting them with the right information based on all of these touch points that we're building on this platform. And so that's really been a big goal for us as we look at this growing fan base that we've had over this cup run, is how do we make sure that we're gaining the right insights about these individuals, so that we're targeting them with information that is more specific to how they are a Blues fan.
Yeah, I think, first party data is on the tip of the tongue and top of the mind, whatever analogy you want to use for just about any marketer these days, and more so than ever as cookies get eliminated eventually. So you mentioned the Lunatics. What other areas are fans entering into that more direct relationship with you? I mean, yes, ticket sales, secondary ticket sales are maybe a little more possible today than they were years ago. And now the Ticketmaster has some secondary markets, and perhaps blockchain or NFTs are on the way and ticketing in some capacity. Enter to wins. It's like, what are the best ways to get fans to enter that direct relationship with you? What is that first touch point? If Lunatics might be for the somewhat more avid fan, someone that is a fan now, what other ways are there to get fans in your front door, so to speak? And some of it does start on the periphery with platforms like social media.
Yeah, we try to make the conversation very easy for fans. Enter to wins, for instance, are a very easy way that a lot of fans, hey, I'd love to enter to win. Tickets to a game, a playoff game, obviously was a big one for us, given the fact that we didn't have as many fans in the building. But it's very easy, subtle engagement things that you can also do just to make the fans feel like they have a voice. We had a number of game day activations that we rolled out, from predicting who's going to score the first goal of the game to guessing the final score of the game, predicting the starting lineup, checking in on the platform, just telling us, hey, where are you at? The cool thing is we had a series of things that we would rotate through our social channels to promote. And we made the platform as simple as possible. So once somebody went on there to do one activity, they would end up doing 3 or 4 others. And we would have survey questions that we would just throw on there. We would never promote these questions. They would just be on the platform. So if you get on there to complete an activity or two that you saw promoted on social media, I'm going to answer this question as well. And so we would get thousands of survey responses from questions we never promoted anywhere. That's awesome. Just capturing people while they're on the platform and making it really easy for them to use.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, I always like to think about and say how I've seen teams just run like random Twitter polls or Instagram story polls, and that information doesn't necessarily go somewhere outside more anecdotally, and the social team maybe looking at it and taking into account. But then there's also just those easy ways where you can ask a fan here and there about their experience with the team. When it doesn't have to be a formal 15-question survey they answer via email or whatever it might be through your SurveyMonkey. That's really cool. I love that. I want to bounce into a little more on the tech side and the innovation side, because first off, to be able to have innovation in your title is super cool. I'm sure it's exciting every day, every month, every year, not knowing that what technology could look like in the near future, let alone the long-term future, and being able to sort of envision what that could look like for fan experience, for fan engagement. So first off, I guess, how do you approach that challenge of trying to stay on the cutting edge of what is latest and greatest in fan engagement, fan in technology, and fan experience? How do you kind of know what's shiny new object versus something that's going to have legs? How do you go about evaluating the potential of something and evaluating success of something? So all this is to kind of give you the opportunity to talk about what goes into evaluating and implementing technology today and for the future.
Yeah, it's it's exciting, and I can't tell you how much I love this part of my role. And really, when we look back in the last 3 or 4 years, we saw as an opportunity as an organization to be more cutting edge and to dive more into emerging technology. And like I mentioned earlier, digital, it takes a full company buy-in of the potential of the path that you can go down, and eliminating some of those silos. We've the old style of a front office for a sports team. It was pretty simple, right? You sold tickets, you sold sponsorship, F&B, retail. You have your marketing group, you have your PR group, you have your community group, and technology has really brought everything together. And it's so fantastic to see how things have meshed together so much more, and those lines between departments have really started to be blurred. So we really went into this looking at, how as an organization can we embrace innovation by focusing on having an understanding of what's out there today, what are we not doing, and then what's coming, so we can be as prepared as possible. Also making sure that we're going to market with something new at the right time and when it's best for our fan base. We learned lessons over the course of time. When we rolled out mobile ticketing a couple of years ago, we did so at the same time when we rolled out loaded value being a part of it, and putting season ticket holder discounts that could also be scannable through a Ticketmaster barcode. And great to throw out so many things that innovative, but it's a little overwhelming at times for our fan base and for them to be able to embrace all this technology. So it's we always have to take a little bit of step back and say, what goes first, and let's not try to do everything, but let's take this to market at the right time. And we certainly had our challenges at the start of this pandemic, and like a lot of teams, we realized coming out of this, when we were to welcome fans back, we had to position ourselves a little bit different. And so, we went from being 75% mobile ticketing the start of or before the pandemic to almost right at 99% for this season, introducing mobile ordering for the first time, transitioning our building to being cash free, doing all of those little things that are now quickly becoming the norm, that were just expedited over this process. Whereas you would have seen a lot of teams move this direction, but not as rapidly as what happened. So I love the challenge. I love being able to brace things. I have a ton of phone calls with vendors in the industry. I work a lot in the startup space, do a lot of fun work with companies like Stadia Ventures and Hype Sports Innovation, just to be introduced, see what's out there, see what's the new, the latest, the greatest, follow along as best I can using, Twitter and LinkedIn. But truly it's networking with people, wanting to show the St. Louis Blues as being an innovative organization, so that when something new comes to market, they're trying to reach and get something going with an NHL team or something like that. They're like, hey, you should reach out to the St. Louis Blues. That's really what we want to do.
Really love chatting with Matt. Again, a VP of Innovation Digital Strategy at the St. Louis Blues. Highly recommend listening to that full conversation. Look it up in the podcast archives. Matt is full of good knowledge and insight and continues to do just great stuff with the St. Louis Blues. Next up on the Best of Digital Social Media Sports podcast, here is part of my conversation with Burton Lee. As I mentioned earlier, at the time we spoke, he was Executive Director of Business Operations with the Peterborough Petes of the Ontario Hockey League, Major Junior Hockey. And now he's Director of Game Operations and Fan Experience for the Professional Women's Hockey League, the PWHL. Burton is just a tremendous human being, really smart, really takes into account the growth of his team as well, and really understands community and what it's like to build a fan base. Especially starting out with the Peterborough Petes and growing in his role there, and what it's like to really run a team that is connected with the community and how you build that brand connection with the community. We also talk about scrutinizing metrics when you're at a smaller team where you really have to make hay with ticket sales. You really have to make sure that you're getting everything out of your resources. What's that like when you can't, yes, you want to celebrate the quote-unquote vanity metrics, and they do have value, as Burton will tell us in this part of our chat. We also really have to understand what metrics are going to move the needle, because you can't afford to waste any resources or time or effort on anything that does not move the most important needles for the organization. So here it is, part of my chat with Burton Lee.
Demographic-wise, Peterborough is the oldest demo in Canada by age. So from a social standpoint, it's always been interesting trying to figure out what our messaging is there. And, obviously you lean on your Facebooks to talk to the 50 to 64 demo. And but really on top of it, the challenge has been, what are we trying to say and to whom? As you mentioned, Neil, it's very easy to get wrapped up in, let's just try and be like Vegas or Carolina on the hockey side and be funny and cool and edgy on social media, but our fan base doesn't reflect that. And frankly, we don't have the resources from a people perspective to keep up with that sort of thing. So you end up doing it half-assed. And really our challenge as we've grown, when I started with 3 full-time staff on the business side, now up to 10 with really leveraging volunteers and interns a lot better. So you got about 20 or 25 bodies working at any given time. Now we're trying to identify the brand, and you've had some great guests recently talking about this too, like David Brickley from STN. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what the brand is, and you're just going to get lost. And so community has been a huge component to us, trying to take a very unique Peterborough community. If you've ever been to this city, it feels different than other places, and share that with the world. It is an old city, very transient in nature. Lots of people from here have relatives here. It's a cottage destination place. So a lot of people, especially Canadians, have been through here to the cottage. So the brand of Peterborough itself resonates with folks, and we really try to make sure that that's reflected in our social. The other pillars of that, the Hockey Hub, as I mentioned, we've been around so long, we've graduated so many folks through here from a hockey standpoint. We're really known as that Hockey Hub. There's a lot of the old folks, the term's a little bit passe, but most people that were born or played through the 50s, 60s, 70s called us the Pete's Mafia, because everybody was from the Pete's, it seemed like. And even now, high-ranking NHL executives either played or coached or worked with the Pete's organization. So you've got that side of things as well. And we don't want to lose history. As you can imagine, as is the case with most sports orgs, your social media people are early 20s, your young millennials or Gen Z. They aren't all that tuned into the history, but even though we've got a bunch of early to mid 20-year-olds and I'm in my early 30s, a lot of the times we're not talking to people that are our age. And sure, we'd love to have more young fans, and we're working on that side as well, but our audience skews a lot older. So if we're not deeply aware of our own history and all the success that we've had, we're missing a really great way to engage. And you can see that on our Twitter, but especially on our Instagram right now. Even though it's a younger skewing platform, a lot of our content is geared towards a very visual look at all the cool things that have happened in our history. So yes, it'll strike that nostalgic bone with the older fan, the mom or the dad that grew up with the team, but it's also going to look really cool to see the Cooperall, the old pant, short, I don't know what you call them, and the weird helmets that we used to wear, or no helmets. That strikes with the kids that are on the platforms too. So it's an interesting look, but it's really easy to get lost in it all, to be honest.
No, that's super interesting to think about how that social media content, because it's visual, it's almost funny or amusing or entertaining in some way, can have that hit that note for the older fans of nostalgia, and also hit the note for younger fans who were like, look at this crazy outfit or look at this crazy picture that I can share and laugh at and engage with. And I guess I was thinking too, as you were speaking about just the general older demographic that does tend to be the Pete's fans, the ones that are coming to a lot of games and paying a lot of the bills, so to speak. And I was thinking of the Dazed and Confused line of like, we get older, but in this case, you guys do get older, but they also stay around the same age as being older as well, because the Pete's have been around for a while. So you've had kids who grew up as Pete's fans that maybe moved out or moved back into Peterborough, and now are that 50, 60-year-old range that were young at one point and Pete's fans. So like, how do you look at the sort of the lifespan of a Pete's fan? Like, do you find a lot of it really is just, let's focus on who we have that's here right now, whether they moved back into Peterborough, whether they lived elsewhere and retired to Peterborough, and trying to appeal to that fan base, and which is again very community focused as well, versus trying to build those fans for life. And what do those fans for life mean to Peterborough if they ultimately move away?
we spend a lot of time focusing on history, but trying to spin it into the present. So, whether it's an alumnus that went on to a Hockey Hall of Fame career, or if it's someone that played 10 games with its 4 years ago, but is now, a lawyer in town or a teacher across the province, there's always a story to be told. And so it's pretty important, as I'm sure you get from a lot of folks that work for smaller companies, to really have a multifaceted approach. And I think we're always trying to accomplish at least two things at once with our content. So yeah, as I mentioned, we want to provide that nostalgic kid about that player that someone watched years and years ago. But it's important for us to show that they're still relevant, or what they're doing now and where they are. So a lot of the content is based around that. I think if you look at a platform like TikTok that we're on too, it's the next stage in the life cycle is really differentiating that content. It's so easy for a small team to say, we're just going to copy and paste the same thing, all the same social copy across different platforms. And we know that's I want to be polite and say not a great strategy, but what type of strategy that is. So yeah, it's a great question, Neil. And I'm really interested in diving more into the data for our fans. We do see that transient nature a lot, as I mentioned, people that born and raised here, great family roots in this city, not a ton of jobs in Peterborough, unemployment rate's fairly high, blue collar town, sort of trying to figure out where we fit. And so people leave for college or university, but it is an emerging market in some areas. And so people will move back here, and housing is a bit more affordable than the Greater Toronto area. So, now all of a sudden you've got that person that grew up watching games with dad and grandpa that are now 35 with their own kids. So you're potentially seeing 4 generations of a family at a game, which is really special.
I love that. And it really speaks to how you guys can activate that feeling of being a generational team. So it's you almost want everyone that grows up in Peterborough, or in a Peterborough Pete's family, to want to come back one day, whether they move back or not, but want to come back maybe every single year and bring their kids to a game, bring their grandparents and kids to a game, and just have that generational experience with the family. And that can almost be, aspirational, but make sure that you're always on the hearts and minds of fans, no matter where they are and no matter how old they are.
Yeah, and it's really easy to try and I think to get lost in the fact that you want to highlight your stars. Mason McTavish is going to be a top 5 probably draft pick in the NHL next month, and a guy that's been a really standout player for us even before the pandemic when he was in his rookie season. But we know that every one of our players impacts someone. Every single minor hockey player in the city right now, except for one organization, is a Peterborough Pete. They all wear the same jerseys that we do. We license that out to them. It's a great marketing tool. And we send our players to their practices. Our players are in every school multiple times a year. And it doesn't, obviously we don't just send the star players out to visit the grade 5 classrooms. So we know that, and when I touched on the content earlier, we don't just need to focus on the handful of guys that have made Hockey Hall of Fame, or the 200 guys that are in the NHL, because odds are the player that really resonated with a fan wasn't that guy. It wasn't Steve Yzerman, who only played for us for 2 years because then he was gone to Detroit. It was the guy that had a full 5-year career with us, much like you'd see with the NCAA, that played his full season plus an extra for the football team, and really ingrained himself in the community.
Oh, Bert, there's so many different directions we can go here. I'm trying to figure out which turn I want to take, but I can totally relate to what you're saying. I remember very vividly at one of my jobs when I went out to El Paso, Texas, to see a junior hockey team, the El Paso Rhinos, and being at a youth camp with them and seeing these young kids look up to these junior hockey players that many of whom won't ever play beyond the El Paso Rhinos, but to those little kids, they're everything. They're the heroes. And no matter what you are, if you're wearing the Pete's jersey, whether you are Mason McTavish or you are a player who's his career is going to be over after the OHL, for that kid, that interaction, like especially the smaller you get with the team, those one-to-one interactions create those fans for life and instill that emotional connection that and we talked about it recently, you and I, around these super fans, and you create a super fan for life right there. And the more you can have those one-on-one interactions with every player, that's huge, and that's how you develop that fan base for life. But I do want to shift a little bit. You mentioned TikTok as well,
And I think TikTok is very sexy, of course, and a lot of organizations, teams, leagues will enjoy that first video that goes viral, whether it's the first one they post or not. People will have that experience of, okay, this one went viral. This one got whatever, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, whatever the volume is for your organization. So when you guys are thinking about what defines social media success, how much do you really have to parse through the numbers and not just seek the biggest number, but seek the biggest relevant number? If you go viral on TikTok, but it is, 50% of it is from people outside the country or heck, on the other side of the world or in South America, wherever it might be, people that will never really be able to be a Pete's fan. Does that mean something to you? Ultimately, it's just, hey, a bigger number is always going to be a better thing, so let's shoot for it. Or do you look at those numbers and really have to scrutinize them more than, say, more than an NHL team, for example?
The thought that we're doing more scrutiny from an analytics perspective than a pro team is great, Neil. Thank you for giving us some credit. Yeah, we really just try not to
just questioning those big numbers, I guess, and being like, okay, we did this big number, but how much should we really care about how big the number is?
We question everything for sure. But one of the questions, the meta questions, is how much energy and time do we want to invest in this? And maybe this is a bit of a departure from your typical guest, that we try not to spend too much time over analyzing. And I think if you asked us on any given day, we wish we had more time to do it, but I think we're still at the phase in our growth cycle, for better or for worse, where we're trying to put out as much content as we can that's relevant to our fans, and we have a pretty good sense of what that is at this point. And if something doesn't slap on TikTok, that's okay. We're okay with that. Frankly, I think we're one of 2 or 3 teams in our league that have TikTok at this point. And it's just, it speaks to the pandemic, but it's really just that resource load. So no, we really, obviously on the surface, when we're reporting our numbers to our board of directors, we are absolutely going to show those vanity numbers, how many impressions, how many followers we gained that month. But we know deep down that some content's just better than others. But it's sort of been skewed the last couple of years because the secret sauce for us has been anything to do with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we've got a couple players that have been drafted by the Maple Leafs. We did some viral content with Steve Dangle, who's a hockey focused influencer up here, for those that don't know Steve. And that was just all organic stuff that our staff, DM'd someone about and made happen. We also drafted Liam Kirk, who is the only player that's really ever come out of England. He's born and raised and trained in England. He's now signed by the Arizona Coyotes. He was picked up by us in the import draft, which I don't think we need to get into that. But basically, we had England's best ever hockey player playing for us for a couple seasons. And it seemed like the entire country of England engaged in our tweets every single time we put that either England or the UK or Great Britain flag in the tweet. It was as simple as that. And so we knew that if we wanted to get big numbers on social, we'd just do more stuff with Kirky. And to your point, Neil, yeah, that's probably not going to drive as much as doing some great local campaign and pushing. But we also sold boxes and boxes of custom jerseys to folks in the UK and shipped them over, and we did do some revenue generation there too. So long answer short, we really don't overanalyze our data, but we're also hyper aware of the fact that the vanity stuff's not all that important.
Yeah, no, I think the analysis comes probably up front saying, do we want to even be on TikTok? And then from there, let's have success on the platform. But the decision first is, do we have the resources and manpower and relevance to be on a platform in the first place? And I think what's interesting for you guys is you probably have on your roster people, that perfect demographic of the age for TikTok creators and people that want to be creating. And we're getting, as the generations get younger and younger, as they grow up rather, we're getting, everyone is born as a creator almost. Like, you have a lot of people that aren't lurkers on social media, they're actually posting content. And you mentioned, some players will come and go. Some players will be there for, through their overage year, be there for 4 or 5 years. And so how much can you really make it about
the name on the back as opposed to the name on the front. And there are Pete's fans, but there are also fans of players. That's not mutually exclusive. But can you really do the players become front and center during their short tenure there, and then they're replaced by another superstar? I think it's a long answer just to say how we're seeing sports overall become more superstar driven, more name driven, more back of the jersey driven. How does that play out for junior hockey?
Yeah, I look at a brand like the Toronto Raptors, part of the MLSE portfolio, and the Raps locally here have done a really nice job of marketing their players through their corporate partnerships. So they're making sure that Pascal Siakam is in the Osmo's shawarma ad, instead of just throwing the logo on there. And so they're hitting that dual purpose of branding player and team, but also, they're getting their bottom line with the CP sale. So that's stuff that we want to do a little bit more. But to your point, the front versus back of the jersey, you're totally right. It's cyclical. I mean, best case scenario, we'll have, frankly, a star player, but who gets drafted high to the NHL, but because he's just not quite a superstar, would actually end up playing for us for a couple of years after he was drafted from a development standpoint. Which isn't it's kind of unique for most sports, right? Typically, think NFL, NBA, like you're drafted and then you leave college and you go and play.
Probably most similar to baseball out here, to college baseball.
Exactly. Yeah. So, they continue on. For the most part, you're drafted to your NHL club, but you continue on for 1 or 2 years, unless you're Connor McDavid or really that top echelon. So that's best case scenario. Is there's all sorts of hype, and we could see it with a guy like Mason McTavish. Probably drafted first through fifth next month, and depending on who he lands with, may not make that roster, probably with us for at least one more year. And then all of a sudden you've got the guy who already had all the hype from the national media, but is still in Peterborough. And we saw it with Nick Robertson just before the pandemic. He was drafted by the Maple Leafs. He was their first pick, although in the second round. And obviously anytime Toronto does anything in Ontario, people are noticing. So that was great. But from a player marketing standpoint, it's probably not the focus. I'll give an example. Andrew D'Agostini was a goalie that played for us for 5 years. Good goalie, serviceable type of guy, but and had the longest possible career with the junior team that you can have. But he really endeared himself to the local community to the point where in the final playoff stretch in his 5th year, people were buying and producing merchandise with D'Agostini for Mayor on it. And the type of thing that you'd sort of see around a player that had been with a pro team for closer to a decade, really, really ingrained himself. And that's because he went so far above and beyond with his community engagement, starting charities and working with anyone that would call him. And that's such an outlier, Neil, for us to be able to have a player that we can brand like that and leverage. So it's got to be about the name on the front, and the players get that. So we try to strike a balance, and we try to help make sure that we're promoting what we can promote. But it's really, from a macro perspective, it's all about the Pete's and the logo and our brand as a whole.
Awesome stuff with Burden, someone I continue to call a friend in the industry today, and it's awesome to see what he's doing with the PWHL as that league is really coming off or having a tremendous inaugural season. And it will be exciting to see the growth continue to come. Listen up to that full conversation. I highly recommend it. It's really good for anyone, whether you're working at a huge organization or a small organization. You will learn a lot and come away with some great takeaways and actionable insights. Next up on the Best of Digital Social Media Sports podcast, you're going to hear from an industry legend. He won't like that I'm calling him an industry legend, but he truly has been in the space, when websites were first becoming a thing, let alone social media, let alone mobile, and he continues to just have his hands all over it. At the time we spoke, he was VP of, he was already starting his own thing, Jeremy McPeak Communications, but of course he spent several years as VP of Digital and Brand Strategy with the Phoenix Suns. Now he's working with several organizations. You may have seen him working with Super Bowl or the Fiesta Bowl or with Yins Cam. He just has his hands over lots of things because people understand that he gets it more than anyone, and he truly does bring tons of value and knows how to find a great team as well. In this part of our chat, we talk about the importance of understanding your audience and how that relates to building a content strategy. We also talk about managing across the organization. Again, so important when you're touching these digital channels that really speak for the organization. And then, of course, along with that, we talk about the importance of building a brand and understanding your brand's voice. Cannot say enough good stuff about Jeremy. He continues just to teach us all, and I learn from him, look up to him. So listen up. Here's part of my chat with Jeremy McPeak.
I think I certainly tried and I learned and we came up with a lot of great executions, but there were also times where we butted heads with the salespeople who, and I try to empathize with them as well, because their job is just to sell. Their job is to bring in more revenue. So there were times when they had a partner that wanted 12 Facebook posts and 45 tweets, and so the sales team was just trying to get the deal done. So they're putting that stuff in the deal to try and sweeten the packages or get the deals done, and they're not necessarily thinking about what that does on the other side. So there were times that we butted heads and had disagreements and arguments, but I think for the most part we really worked together and tried to come up with what would benefit everybody, the fans, the organization, and the sponsors, and that's really when you win.
And I guess as you guys started to grow over the years, and I'm looking at a couple angles here. One is how the traditional media started to fit in along the way, and whether you guys saw yourselves as complementary, as supplementary, as a different reason to exist, a different coming from a different place, and how that affected the amount of resources you need to get into. Hey, we can get highlights from the broadcast, but we need to make sure we're getting additional highlights. We need to have another in-game video person for our own team. Or so I guess, how did that traditional media fit in and supplementing or complementing or competing with your content, and how that maybe change or evolve along the way?
That's a good question. I think we, in a lot of ways, we had good relationships with like the local media, the sports writers, the beat writers, the local radio hosts. But at the same time, there was a little bit of competitiveness there, because we didn't want to always be second or third or fourth to the stories. Yeah. And yet there were a lot of stories we couldn't tell. We as brand ambassadors for the team, we couldn't be writing stories that would rip apart, a player's performance or the coach's decision or the GM's decision. So those kind of stories we couldn't touch. We couldn't write stories about rumors and potential trades. And so the local media was always going to beat us on those stories. But in terms of finding out, unique angles on players or things that players did in their spare time or their hobbies, their passions, their history, their story, their childhood history. So that, we would try to, come up with those angles and those stories that were really unique, that showed our players in a different light, and figure out ways to tell those stories through our social that nobody else told, or nobody else had the time to dive into those stories in depth, or even the relationships necessarily with the players to find out some of that information. But we also had a good relationship with our in-house content team. We had a Suns Productions broadcast house in-house that produced all of our television broadcasts. We were unique in that we, as the organization, produced our own broadcasts and then had basically a rights deal with the local broadcaster who aired them. But we produced them in-house, and so they had a team that was also producing a lot of video content and feature packages and unique highlight packages. And so we had a good relationship with them and tried to work with each other and complement each other and bring them along if we came up with some unique angle and set up something with players, and they would do the same, or they would share their packages with us to post on social media and our website and our mobile app after they'd aired on TV, so that fans that didn't see the pregame show or the halftime show could see those features, on social media. So it was we had a good relationship, but also a bit of a competitive relationship as well at the same time, because we wanted to stand out with what we were producing.
No, it's cool. I can remember back in the day, whenever you think about PR people pitching stories to local media, saying, "Hey, this guy has a really cool backstory. You should write about it. Here's a brief." Yeah. And now yes, you can still do that, and it's not a bad thing, but it's also, let's talk to our in-house content team, what they're working on. Hey, did you know this guy has a really awesome story that we could be telling, instead of having to be at the beck and call of a local media person? Although the local media person is probably losing some of that hegemony or that power these days, I guess.
Well, that's a whole nother interesting angle that I didn't even think of when I was answering your last question. But the in-house PR team, a lot of what they are kind of evaluated on and judged on from upper management is how many stories they can get placed in the local media, and what the what the estimated value is of those stories that are getting placed. So their focus is getting the outside media to tell unique stories as well. So a lot of times they didn't necessarily want us to tell something first, because then the local media might not want to tell it. So we certainly had great relationships with our PR team, and I'm still great friends with a lot of the PR people that worked for us back in those days. But there was always kind of a give and take of, that they wanted, a lot of times wanted the local media to tell a story before we did, and we're like, no, but this is our properties. This is where we sell tickets and sponsorship, and we should want to get those eyeballs on our site. But that's just working in an organization. Everybody's kind of got, I won't say their own agenda, but their own objectives and their own things that they're judged on and that they're trying to accomplish. So there's always an internal struggle, if you will, to work together and be good teammates, and at the same time get your own responsibilities and jobs done.
Yeah. I want to talk a little. Let's spend a second on that sort of external versus internal, and more so around the different audiences you may be speaking to. Like when you were doing Suns magazine, you knew which of those 15,000 fans in theory you're talking to. Those are fans. They have a deep relationship with the Suns. When you broaden it to the information superhighway, more broadly with social media as well, you're speaking to, especially on your own platforms, perhaps you're speaking to those diehard fans, the ones that are spending time on your O&O, on your own real estate. Whereas other cases or other stories, even, you might be thinking about, well, how can we reach the more casual fan, someone that has maybe been to one Suns game in the last 5 years.
Right.
So we want to think about, like, do you program differently for different audiences? Do you think about different audiences based on their perceived level of avidity, perceived level of investment with the team currently?
Yes and no. It's the type of thing you would have conversations about internally, because there were a lot of different audiences. You had your season ticket holders, your long tenured season ticket holders who'd been there forever, and you'd have your first or second year season ticket holders, and you'd have local fans who buy tickets and come to games, but they're not season ticket holders. You've got fans outside of the market who are big fans, but they will never come to a game because they don't live anywhere nearby. And then you've got international fans too that are following you from other countries. So, and you've got, even different audiences within each of those, men and women. You've got, senior fans and kids. And so it's a challenge to try and talk to everybody and in different ways. And I can't say that we were ever the geniuses at figuring out what that puzzle was and how to do all the different pieces. But there was certainly times where we had certain content for certain audiences that really would only appeal to them, and content for other audiences that would only appeal to them. So
even the external, like a story on local news or a story in the local paper, reaching a different audience than you may reach on suns.com and made.com/suns. And how, like, maybe a story is better told in the broader setting, or maybe it's not. Or we differentiate on our own platform because we're speaking to someone that already loves us versus someone that's seeing the local news story that may be aware of us but doesn't love us yet.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. There are a lot of factors to consider every time you're putting a story together and figuring out how to write it, how long it should be, or should it be video instead? What channel should it go on? Should it go in your game program, your printed publication, or should it be on your website, or should it be in your mobile app? Should it be on your video talk show? Should it be on the TV show? I mean, there's so many different channels and opportunities and places to put stuff. Yeah. It's a constant juggling act, and the conversations never end. You're always talking about where's the best place for this type of content, even between channels, even today, even between Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and Reels and IGTV and Stories, and what's the best platform for this particular type of content. And I think those conversations are going on every day in every organization, and will be for until the end of time, probably.
And there's plenty of intersections too. I do want to hit a couple more topics. So a few minutes left here. Jeremy McPeak, founder and principal of Jeremy McPeak Communications. But I guess even you look at the foundational piece of content, you may have a long form podcast interview with the head coach, and that may be something that only a handful of diehard fans listen to the whole thing. But there might be a sound clip that is just so awesome that everyone in sport, as a sports fan, would love it.
So now it becomes a reel, becomes something you share on Twitter and a quote graphic, and it becomes a story that Bleacher picks up. So you can be serving all those audiences concurrently in different ways based on the platform and what may, I guess, catch their fancy a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. No question. And a lot of these channels have multiple ways to share content. Like Instagram, I just mentioned, they've got three or four different channels built within Instagram now. Team mobile apps are an incredibly important piece of the conversation. And one of my clients today is Ginscam, the mobile app developer of 200 different sports teams, leagues, and arenas around the world, and including the Suns mobile app and a lot of the NFL and NBA mobile apps and La Liga. So that's a great platform and a great way to share all those different types of content. So fans who really gravitate towards audio can get the audio there, the podcast, the long form, or the people that want to read the short articles or see the tweets or what have you can get all that content in one place. So it's a challenge for digital people today, but I think it's also what's fun about this business. It's what I've always loved about it. You're not doing the same thing every day. You've got all these different types of ways to tell the story and figuring out how to tell it, where to tell it, what form to tell that story in is what makes it fun. And for people who are creative, I think they thrive on that and enjoy that a little bit. It's a little bit of chaos, it's a little chaotic, but it's also fun that it's always new and it's always challenging you in new ways.
It's another sense too these days. It's almost like a sixth sense where you're watching the Dallas Mavericks game and you see Luka flash that smile on camera. And I don't know if everyone feels that, but in my social media timeline, everyone's like, "Oh, that's gonna be a meme." Like,
yes,
it's
for sure.
You see it. I think maybe as everyone of a certain generation may feel that way now because they just see it and they know that that's the thing they need to get that screenshot of. But It's fascinating that you can pick up on these things now and understand, okay, this is going to work in this platform, or this would be great for this, or we can have some problem with this. It's fascinating. You did mention Yins came in the mobile app, and now that hit a good nerve for me because I have worked in the mobile app space, and people would always ask me like, why are teams always trying to get me down their app? Like, what's all? I do want to let you speak to that with
sure.
Lots of different aspects to it, but there's something I always thought about that is more in that intangible brand affinity identity space of if someone downloads your app, that is real estate on your phone. That's an icon on your home screen. And when someone looks at their phone, they see your app on it. Every time I open my my home screen, I see that team logo on it. And I think there's something to that as well. Like it's part of you. It's part of your smartphone, which is such an important part of your life. So I guess speak about if someone were to ask you that nebulous question of why are teams to carry out you to download the mobile app? And if there is to that, once someone does get into that, like enter that, the home of the Suns or the home of the team, so to speak, that it really truly does become a daily part of their identity or a part of their identity in general.
Yeah, no question. Back when I was still with the Suns, we were actually Ginscam's first ever NBA client. We had their first NBA app. Now I think they've got 23 of them. But at that time, it really was about, for the organization and the team, it was really about another way for us to push out information, to remind people that the game's on, remind them what channel it's on. Here's the stories that are on our website you can read on your phone. And it was all about content. And all of that content is still available in the majority of team apps today. But it's also much more about a business tool now for organizations. So, they're selling and activating sponsorships through mobile apps now. There's mobile ticketing. So fans have to have the mobile app to pull up the ticket and get it scanned at the door, and they can forward their tickets to their friends. And there's season ticket holder member portals. So if you're a season ticket holder and you log into the app, you can get a discount card at the concession stand or at the merchandise stand. And you can see how many loyalty points you've accrued from attending games. You can find your season ticket member rep right there and contact them and say, hey, there's a problem with my seat, or there's a obnoxious fan sitting next to me.
Yeah.
All that can go through the mobile app. Then there's those unique fan engagement experiences like augmented reality. Like the San Antonio Spurs just launched an AR portal that you can basically scan your living room floor or your backyard or your driveway with their app, and it brings up this virtual Hall of Fame museum for Tim Duncan.
Wow.
And you can walk physically in your house, and it looks like you're walking through the museum, and you can go and tap on a trophy, and it'll pull up highlights from that NBA Finals series that he won, the Finals MVP. But it's also got, sponsor inclusion throughout the virtual museum that they've sold. You can buy a Tim Duncan jersey. So there's all this cool, unique fan experience as well that makes it fun as a fan. But then there's so many other elements of mobile apps now. There's mobile auctions, so you can bid on your team's, game worn jersey or game worn shoes. There's the live podcast and the live post game show. If you can't watch those on TV, you could watch them in the mobile app. So there's all this additional content as a fan that you can get through the team's app that you might be able to get pieces here and there. You might be able to get a piece of the snippet from the post game conference on Twitter, and you might be able to get a live stream on Facebook of, the training camp media day or whatever. But to have one source where everything is at once, everything you used to get from the website, but also your utilities, your tickets, your post-game show. Some of them have their live stream of their games or the audio, the radio feed. So there's so much content in a mobile app now that's the reason I think fans should download their favorite team's app. It's not just to get the PR stories and the box score, but it's all this other wealth of content that they can get to really dive in and learn more about their team and really, whet their appetite for what they want to know about their favorite club.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool thing. You think about a fan may if they are on Twitter, they might stumble across something in their timeline, or they might click on your Twitter handle and see what they missed, or you can go to the app and you're truly going there to see everything and anything that you could do because you want to spend time with the team. You want to spend time with whatever they have at up their offering.
Yeah.
And this is all the potential utilities as well.
And you want to order a burger and a beer from your seat and have it brought to you. And you just do that through the app. You don't have to get up and go stand in a line. There's all kinds of stuff. There's literally hundreds of features that Yinscam offers and other app vendors as well, but that really make the apps unique, I think, for fans today.
I do want to spend. We're gonna run through some quick topics here. Jeremy, you and I can go forever. I love this stuff.
Hey, let's keep going. I'll talk all day if you want, or I'll come back for a second episode.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about just voice and personality. I think back to my early days on social media, and I cringe at I sounded like a freaking press release PR person with really stuff because we were kind of trained on that. And
sure.
Hey, a tweet is tantamount to a press release. We got to sound formal. It's the team announces XYZ, and that's it. You still see some of that here and there, but the NBA, more than any league, I think, is known for having a distinct voice, having a distinct personality, being able to develop brand. And I think when you're starting out, when you look back to the magazine days, it was about you were presenting stories, and you weren't necessarily thinking about, we gotta have a joking and playful tone and sarcasm throughout.
Right.
Maybe you were, but tell me, how did that sort of brand intersection come along, and how important has it become to really help fans fall in love with the team, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's definitely important today. I think if you can, and finding your voice is tricky, and everybody's voice is a little different. And sometimes you might have 2 or 3 people who are running a Twitter account in an organization, and trying to find a voice that they all can tie into and use and be consistent with can be a little bit of a challenge. But I think if you can come up with a voice that feels authentic and feels like a fan, the voice of a fan, but also be professional at the same time, which is tough. You can, some fans are going to be using a lot of profanity when they're watching a game, and or using slang words that 99% of the fans may not understand or whatever. So you got to kind of find a voice that's fun and playful and but genuine and real and isn't just always upbeat and positive, because fans aren't always upbeat and positive. If your team loses by 40, you can't put a positive spin on that and have your followers feel like they see that and your team just lost by 40. They're upset. They don't want to see spin. So in some cases, that's where you maybe revert to the little bit more of the PRs, just straightforward. Here's the results. Here's the stats. But if you can, if instead you can say and use a crying emoji or an emoji with the eyes drooping, you're sad, that expresses what a lot of your fans are feeling. So I think it's really about trying to be genuine and trying to be authentic while not crossing the line and getting too sarcastic or too aggressive or too offensive to other teams. There's always a balance there, and it's we've certainly seen the cases over the years where someone at a team crossed the line and went too far, and next thing you know, they're out of a job. So it's it's a fine line trying to find that balance of being playful and being authentic without going too far.
Tremendous stuff chatting with Jeremy McPeak of Jeremy McPeak Communications. Look him up. Continue to keep up with what he's doing because he continues to lead this industry in many ways and is just one of the best people out there. And you can learn a lot from him. Continue to learn a lot from him as he keeps on working with several organizations in the greater sports and sports business industry. Listen up to that full conversation. I highly recommend that one. Last up, we come to the end here. One more to go, though. Here's part of my conversation with Joe Pinchin. He is Director of Digital Content with the Chicago Bulls. Previously to that, you'll hear in his accent, he is from the UK. He worked a lot with the British Basketball League and really learned a lot there about truly being not quite a one-man show, but really understanding how you have to maximize resources at a smaller league. The British Basketball League does not have the budget and resources that the NBA does, let alone a single NBA team. And Joe really took a lot from that experience and brought that to the Chicago Bulls. So we talk about what it's like to truly maximize resources. We also talk about the Bulls because the Bulls, really, the last decade or so, they have led the way in a lot of ways. Really understanding how to create effective content, getting the most out of their content, even for an NBA team. We talk about what it's like to innovate in the content space, and of course, the Bulls have truly crushed the sponsor content space as well in the last several years. So we talk about the keys to that as well. So listen up. Here's part of my chat with Joe Pinchin of the Chicago Bulls.
So the conversations were generally around with me and an agency that we use, but again, a smaller agency that helped with some things, but not everything. And it was exactly kind of the tones you just set, right? Like, it's okay. Like what can we do with the time we have? Because even with my role, it was never just on digital. I was still, even until I left, I was still dealing with a lot of logistical things of running, a large program from a basketball sense. So it was doing the best we could and trying not to judge ourselves too harshly when we fell short on things. It was also with a focus of immediate impact. We had to sometimes sacrifice time on longer term brand building plays because we needed to make sure that we were getting bums on seats for that Friday's game.
Right.
And that had to be the priority because as a business, if you don't drive that week, that week then doesn't look as busy. Do people come back the following week? Is the atmosphere as good? If someone's coming for the first time that week and it's not full, they may not come back. So it was a weekly pressure to drive people, like the consumer traffic, which dictate. And then to the point I made around media, because the fandom was far more casual, you needed to still be doing all of the baseline. You needed to be doing the preview because people might not know who you're playing that week. And then if they know the team you're playing, they probably don't know more than one player on that team. Outside of course, the diehards are there week in and week out. So it was this constant battle of we want to do this really cool, elaborate stuff that of course then for the most part takes a bunch of time. But you have to make sure that you're doing the baseline. You have to have, the story going to the newspaper every day. You have to make sure that, even baseline stuff like websites were updated. As a league, there wasn't, central feeds to do any of that. So all of that was manual. And so, it was a battle. It was making sure that we were driving fandom, driving, bums on seats for the games. And then it was do as much as possible to try and move the dial of the perception of basketball in the UK. The league still carried a ton of misconception of where it was based on things that happened 15 years ago. And just misconceptions on how professional the players were and what the teams looked like, what the games looked like. And very, very, very rarely did we have someone come to a game and be disappointed with the product. It generally exceeded people's expectations. they would leave with, remarks of like, wow, I can't believe I've not come before, or that's the best kept secret in Leicester. Like, how do people not know about this? And so the product on the floor was good. It's exciting. We had great atmosphere in our arenas. Those smaller European arenas produce, like a loud buzz that is different to a big arena can create. So yeah, it was great. It was exact from a content sense. It was exactly how you said. It was just a battle of, okay, like, have we done enough to make sure that our arena is full this week and next week and the week after? And, are we doing things to then convert those people to season ticket holders? Are we doing enough to maintain our season ticket holders? And for us, we were a more casual activity. So we were then also super aware of our competitors, not just being the two other massive sport teams in the city that generally would play around the same time as us, which was always a battle as well. Mm. But also, a family would be making a decision of whether to come to the basketball that week or go to the cinema or go bowling, even just go to dinner somewhere. So, it was a ton of direct, like, short-term marketing plays, and then wherever we could try and do something that raised the bar and changed the perception. And we have a ton of examples, but like, to give a couple, we did in my penultimate season there, we did a theme night around St. Patrick's Day, which we actually had to go to the league and get approval on breaking rules on jersey colors and stuff because it hadn't been done before, and just themed our entire game like that. We're able to drive, national single game sponsors, which is something we didn't generally pull. It was, if we were selling game sponsorships, it was more around the local basis. So, we were able to attract national brands, attract, a ton of press around it, excite our players as well. We were in a league where us doing a good job digitally and for them led to us being able to recruit higher level players, which obviously then drove a higher level product on the floor, more fans, etc. So we're also you have to keep that in mind as well. It's like, do the players like what we're doing? Because it's not, our contracts aren't big enough to just go and get exactly who we want. We need them to be advocating to their college teammate that's coming out, or a guy they played pro with in Slovenia the year before, that we might want to sign the next season. So the branded game stuff was a step change and an eye opener to me. I think it was about 2 years before I left, that if you can do something exciting and fun, then the fans are there. They are absolutely there. It's just getting over the day-to-day things that have to be done to free up enough time and then climb that mountain to do that little bit more to then actually see the impact. And I think that's where teams fall down in the BBL. They aren't able to quite get over that hump. And we were fortunate enough in Leicester to have things come together to allow us to do so. And it was just this perfect storm to be able to do some cool stuff. And then for me personally, that just drove me to want to do bigger and bigger projects and more crazy things. So
yeah, no, there's so many great points in there. I think back to the times that I've spent in the college space and minor league space, and you're very much right. Like, yeah, we want to do X, Y, and Z, but someone has to make sure the roster is up to date on the website too, and we have to enter in the stats and at some point, and there's like, you have to make sure the lights stay on, so to speak, before you can even move on to the more exciting stuff. Like with Leicester as well. And I want to kind of juxtapose this with the Bulls to some degree. Like, what did move the needle the most to really win over those fans long term? I mean, I think about trying to go into that identity of, hey, you're a Leicester City fan, you should also be a Leicester Riders fan and support the local team. Or maybe there's that brand aspect of it. Like, you look at the Bulls and they have this mystique about their brand and how cool it is. And you have the basketball aspect of it of, hey, come to this weekend's game because it's the top two teams in the league and we're the defending champions. It's like, what tended to actually move the needle the most, I guess, both short term as well as long term? What got that fan to go from casual to diehard?
Winning moves the dial. And it sounds obvious, but it is. Like, and I saw it in teams in the league in the UK and talking to them, and they could do exactly the same things as us, make it look even cooler, but when we go and blow them out by 30, the fandom doesn't grow. That isn't something that's fun to come and watch. That isn't something that you can then do cool content around digitally. It isn't something that sponsors want to be associated with. And so, the success we had at Leicester was a product of, our managing director, our head coach putting together incredible rosters and competing incredibly well and winning. And that just opened the doors to everything else from a growth standpoint. It allowed fans to latch onto something that was fun and exciting and just that ego boost of being a fan of a good team, So I think there's it, and you see, I come here and I see, the Warriors' digital footprint, the Lakers' digital footprint with LeBron, and the Cavs whilst he was there. Like the things that having a great team that wins championships allows you to do cannot be understated. It allows it, and then it snowballs, right? Like that's why I have such respect for what Toronto were able to build, and hopefully what we're able to build here in the future is like to be able to break through and knock off someone that's successful means that you've been able to attract better players, be able to play a better way, develop players better. And that's incredibly tough. Winning drives more winning. And the success of the Riders, like once we climbed that mountain, it allowed us to kind of free flow. And we had to check ourselves to try and innovate and keep pushing and not get, comfortable and not get knocked off of being one of the top teams there. But the performance in sport, the performance drives the business. And I think there's a ton of other things that go into it around brand and things you can do that will of course impact it, but nothing, in my opinion, is more powerful than winning, because it's what people want to see. It's what you want to support. It's what little kids want to go and emulate, which then drives parents to want to come to the games. And it impacts so many things. It presents such a good environment to work in. It's so much fun. So the winning is what moves the dial, and the struggle is the building up the mountain to the point of knocking off the teams that are better in the first place. And so, for the Riders wise, it was that we were able to capitalize on our success and just continue to build year on year on that. And obviously, it's never easy. Other teams are trying to do exactly the same thing, but
right.
It does make it a lot easier. It just opens a ton of doors. I remember back to sponsor meetings and walk in and we arrive with the league trophy and put that on the desk for the discussions. And little fun plays that we do tongue in cheek to it's something you want to be a part of. It's something that's cool, and that is definitely what moved the dial for the Riders side and allowed me to then do more and more content that looked cool, because we had a win, and I guess we didn't really talk on schedule, but the BBL plays generally at weekends, so you might play Friday, Sunday, and then have 5-6 days until your next game. If you've lost both of those games and there's not really storylines that you want to dive into too heavily, you're kind of stuck previewing a game on the hope that it goes better the following week and trying to find storylines around the team that's tough. And instead from us, we were able to then just make a bunch of cool content off the back of those wins, test different things in a fan base that was very positive and happy about how the weekend had gone, and then see what stuck, see what did. And we, over my time there, we did a better veteran job of kind of the analytical tracking side of things and understanding how important it was to understand what content did for our brand, what players were referencing when they came in as to why they were willing to sign with us, what agents were looking at on our channels, to what sponsors were impressed with from an impression stance, from an engagement stance, what they looked for, what they wanted more of, what they wanted less of, what things, when we did certain things on certain weeks, how that affected ticketing and our fan base on the floor. And again, it's in this perfect setting that it's a small enough business to see a granular level how all of those things work. And so if you add 3 live previews and couple of things before, and suddenly your fan base goes up 40% for that weekend in advanced sales, and you're like, okay, well, let's do more of that, or let's take out one thing, see what it was. So that was, for us, it was the winning, man. To answer your question, that was a long ramble on, but winning is what moved the dial there. And I think when you look at the Warriors' footprint, for example, here, they were in however many consecutive finals in recent times. It's drove in the social media age. It drives so much.
Yeah, I mean, it always opens doors, and then it's up to you to be ready to step through those doors and understand which doors are worth stepping into, I guess, to not get too deep into the analogy. And as you mentioned, like looking at what is moving the needle, what is driving performance, what is of interest to players, to ticket buying fans, to other fans, to sponsors. So when you get to an organization like the Bulls, where the sheer volume of content and the I guess the strength of the brand too, where you can only, I guess, do so much when it comes to affecting the brand. What was, I guess, first of all, what was it like making that move and really understanding who the Bulls are, what their content looks like, what their content could look like, and really understanding where to spend the time and resources in driving innovation and doing experiments. So take me through a little bit of what that feeling out process was like, going from the Riders to the Bulls, and what some of the similarities and differences are when it comes to the needs and goals and branding around content.
Absolutely. I think it's the biggest thing to note is I arrived here about a month before March 13th, which is where the city went into lockdown. So
it was your fault.
I arrived, I had like a week or so of games, then we were hosting All-Star in 2020. So got to experience that, and it's just like whirlwind of a couple of weeks, and just started like kind of find my groove. I remember sitting with like management here on a check-in. I was like, yeah, I feel like I kind of loosely understand what the season's going to look like for the rest of the year now. And then we get pulled into a room and get told to go and work from home, and the season's done. So transition was weird. And I think like there's still parts of me that feel, I've been here a year and a half. I still very much feel like the new guy. People reference staff, and I haven't had a conversation with them yet. And, we're starting to drift back into the office here and there, which is great. And but even then, there's places I've not seen and things I don't know how to do and stuff. So it's been a very, very strange of a career move and lifestyle move. Obviously, moving overseas right before a pandemic,
right,
being away from family and friends has been strange. But for the most part, we were able to, this year we were able to have a season. I was, fortunate to be one of the people traveling with the team, and so my life didn't look too different, even in the pandemic. So very, very grateful and fortunate for that. But yeah, arriving it's crazy, right? You go from a business that is single digit staffing on the pro men's team side of things to a huge office at the United Center, and this incredible infrastructure of staff, and the ability to focus solely on your job, although that's still your job then becomes a big job with the size of the brand here. But work with like-minded people, bounce ideas off, have incredible creative departments in design and video, and it's awesome. Like the move's been great. I love it. People have been awesome, very welcoming. From a brand sense, I think as well, like content is content. I think a lot of the things that I felt were important in the BBL, I still feel are important here. I think it's important to service your fans and build community, and I think we're trying different things to cultivate that more. I think I've arrived to a team that struggles at times, and missed the playoffs this year. We missed out last year from going to the bubble, and so we're trying to basketball staff trying to break through and come back to kind of relevancy on the court, and we're trying to do the same from a digital sense. The difference, I guess, is like the brand power of the Bulls is incredible. It's something that from a distance I obviously observed, and you could see how much the 90s had impacted that and grown. The Bulls grew with basketball globally. As this boom happened across the world with basketball, it was closely tied to the guy playing for the Bulls, right? So that the brand power is immense, and I think for me, after a season now, like of kind of navigating that in kind of strange times of COVID, it's exciting because now we can kind of look ahead and we can I'm excited to take some big swings at things and see how they play and try some new things. And we're kind of talking, just this week around, summer league coming up and things we can test and community builders we can look at. But in terms of the job, there's a lot more to consider. But also I think that as you add more people, you add time spent on things that are absolutely necessary, but probably aren't impacting production, if that makes sense, right? Like you have greater approval processes, you have the necessity to have, larger meetings because there's multiple people involved. We have, like I said, incredible creative teams that are producing the work rather than me being a one-man band at Leicester. So it's about hearing their vision, sharing our vision, working together on projects. And even then, it's crazy. Like I said, I've gone from a place of single digit staffing to a place of, this huge office of staff. And yet we still sit and feel completely understaffed and overwhelmed with what we're trying to do, given the size of the brand and how important content has become. But again, for me, the navigation's been great. And it's been eye-opening in a lot of ways. And I think I'm just, I guess, after a season and seeing a calendar year in sport, I think is so crucial to be able to then impact things that now starting to see where I can potentially add some value or at least add some ideas or some different way of thinking coming from where I've come from, which is super fun. And then just continuing to learn from everyone has been awesome too. We have a bunch of staff here and in all departments that have been with the organization or within the league or within sports leagues for a long time. And so it's been a nice comfort blanket to have like all these incredible people around to throw ideas at and then see them take the idea and make it 10 times better than you even thought it could be. So yeah, man, from like I said, like content is still content, right? You're trying to cultivate fandom. The difference here, we're trying to monetize in different ways. We're able to monetize sponsors on our digital platforms and bring revenue and add value to the business in that sense. We try and do it in a way that's true to our fans and is going to resonate with them. Again, we have these great teams to be able to put those things together and do it in a way that we think is true to the Bulls and true to, our brand. And then, as we come back, we're going to see I've been here in a whole season without really having it. We had fans in the building for 3 games. So, coming back, I'm going to see more of, what our brand looks like in the city of Chicago, what that looks like at the United Center, our impact on, driving tickets, driving revenue in that sense is going to be added in, which is fun. And then, we continue to try and break the boundaries, do things that are true to us and do cool things that our fans can enjoy, and that they want to share with their friends and that they want to be a part of. And I think like for as long as we keep that in our discussions, it makes it a super fun place to work and we don't really have to do too many things that we don't like, which is awesome.
When it comes to monetizing content too, I mean, especially I think anyone that works for a sports organization the last year kind of had that mandate even stronger because there was no ticket sales, there was no games at sometimes, so no revenue coming in that sense. So I think the Bulls are among the best in the biz when it comes to integrating partners in a way that in which the content is still very, very good. So for the Bulls, how does sponsor content come together? Is a little bit of chicken and egg where like you guys have a content franchise or a concept first and then it's pitched to a sponsor, other way around where a sponsor comes to you and they want to be involved in social and these are their goals and you develop something, a little combination thereof. So how do those end up coming together to deliver so effectively?
Yeah, man, I think like Luca here and then Dan for us, they've done a great job of working with our partnerships team and then our content studio to build out processes and systems to make that super smooth and not painful at all and exciting for us as creatives. So the process is a mix of what you said, right? We have some things that are, established content franchises that, we're able to, pass to our partnerships team to sell in a very, I guess, basic, but that's the lack of a better word way. Things that we know that we've done before or we want to do, we think are going to work, or we have evidence have worked, that we can attach partners to in different ways, is one way. The other is being, creative and excited on ways to make something new with a partner involved. A lot opens generally. We try and see partnership involvement as a door to being able to do something that potentially we couldn't if there wasn't the money involved. And so with that mindset, it allows you to kind of come with some more big ideas, be able to, utilize different resources and things. So it's fun. It's a fun process. I said, like Luca here, Serena for us as well, working with us has been great. Like they do a great job of, and it's less so my role, and I kind of dip in and out. But the Bulls in general they've built a great process, which is maybe not the most sexy thing to talk about, but it's so key. Like partnership content is going to touch multiple parts of our business. Again, like you said, like previous to this year and then going into this season, partners are generally involved in different things. It isn't just that they sponsor a quarter score, although sometimes that is, or sponsor a video series or something. They might have in arena activations, and there's different things being balanced. So it's definitely a team effort. Our partnership team's great. Our digital team's great at handling that. And then we have approach of having a content studio to kind of take these things to. So teams from creative services, Bulls TV, our video department, our game entertainment team, and Team Benny, and different aspects there, as well as then like our digital department. We have processes in place as a content studio amongst those four kind of separate departments to come together and brainstorm on these things. And again, we're fortunate to be in a position that we seldom have to do things that we don't like and we don't think make sense. We're given the freedom and the empowered to voice what we think is best for our platforms, and given the autonomy to be able to activate those things for the most part, which is awesome. And again, talking to people, as I've got to know people across sports franchises in the US, like that very much isn't the case in all places. So definitely I don't underappreciate that. It's massively important to what we do. And you said, I think much before my time, the Bulls were awesome in terms of how they integrated brands into their content and how they monetized, do it in innovative ways and different ways, and what makes sense for both us and the partner. And again, like what we think is actually going to resonate with our fans. Like there's nothing worse than partnership content, which you can tell is absolutely checkbox partnership content and has no value to the fan base at all. And so for as long as we can avoid that, we do. And we're in a fortunate position that our partnership team have a good understanding of that. And again, that was built much before my time, so much more credit to what I've walked into. But it allows us to do cool things. Even just this week, we unveiled a court with Zenny in the Park District in the south side of Chicago, and did a bunch of content around it. We're able to branch off in cool ways. We have a drop for some custom art basketballs coming up off the back of it, and things that we think are on trend and on moment for where we're at now, and something our fan base is interested in. And then, as I said, resonates with the partner that's been able to convert a court in, the south side of Chicago, engage with the community there, share their message of vision for all and things there. So, and that's just one example. There's tons as you look through our channels. And actually, I think Benedict, we do such a good job that we spend a lot of time on the partnership content. And I think the exciting thing going forward for us is reclaiming, like doing things that maybe haven't got a partnership involved with yet, that are a bigger swing and a bigger risk. And that's exciting for me going into next year, that we're again given the power and the autonomy to come with some big things that potentially could fail and could be a little more risky, and haven't got a partner attached to it yet and things. So it's the gray space that we're able to run into now is super exciting.
Awesome stuff with Joe. He is full of good knowledge and insight, and really has learned a lot from all of his experiences. And again, the Chicago Bulls have a freaking rock star squad there, and Joe is among a big part of it as well. That'll do it, though, for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Listen to all these episodes in full. You can find the full podcast archive at dsmsports.net on your favorite podcast platforms. You can keep up with me, your host, Neil Horowitz, on Twitter, NJH287. Also on LinkedIn. Connect with me there and look for more content. And until next time, we'll have some more good episodes coming for you. I'm really excited about this next one, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. But until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.